Hello, welcome to the Clandestine Podcast. It's me, Gabriel.
And me, Olivia.
How you doing tonight, Liv?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? We spent all day together.
We did. I guess I would know. So, this week, I have the pleasure of bringing the story.
I'm excited to hear it.
Thanks, yeah. All right. So, without further ado, let's get started on this juicy story. Hope you like it. Today we're going to be talking about Colin Norris.
Ooh, who is that?
Who is that, you may ask? I thought you would. Colin Norris is a Scotsman. He grew up a relatively normal life. People said he was a little unruly and had a temper, but other than that, grew up a normal kid. After, going through high school and all that, he went to college and worked as a travel agent. Now, I don't know if in other countries that's maybe I'm just not in the loop, but I didn't know that was like a job you can have as like a travel agent.
I think it's like an older kind of job.
So he did that for a few years. It wasn't really his thing. So he did, like I said, did the travel agent thing for a couple of years and then went to be a nurse, what he originally went to college for.
It's an interesting career shift.
I know, right? From travel agent to that. He wanted to help people. That was like his goal in life. And
okay.
While he was in college, he did all right and out of the ordinary, but he was still coined as being, aggressive, having confrontations with tutors and employees, stuff like that. Actually, the University of Dundee that he went to in Scotland described his behavior as unacceptable.
Ooh.
So it wasn't just having a tantrum here and there. He was...
Yeah.
having unacceptable behavior. I think he graduated in 99, and then in about 2001, he started his work as a nurse in Leeds Hospital, but once again, had problems and fell out with authority figures and experienced staff for being a know-it-all and not doing what was asked of him. Oddly enough, he refused to work with elderly patients, especially female patients. He didn't want to be working with those type of people.
Old people?
Yes, he was very against working with old people, which is strange. I was going to mention this too about his childhood. He was really close with his grandmother. His parents had split up when he was younger. That was kind of like the big thing in his childhood, but other than that, normal, right? It stated that, he was really close with his grandma, that he lived with her for a long time, loved her, took care of her, because he was getting in trouble at work for not helping wash the old women and even just take care of them in general. He was getting in trouble for it. So weird that he had a good relationship with her.
Did you look into why?
Believe me, dude, yes. I looked, nothing.
That's funny. Did you come across when she died?
No. He lied at first and was saying it's difficult to wash them, and then he came forward and said it's because he couldn't get used to the smell. He actually had a training placement before this job at Leeds Hospital in Scotland that he was let go for the same thing. Just anything relating with older patients, not up his alley. It was not his thing. He also, while all of that happened, he refused to attend a course on how to treat the elderly patients.
He didn't go?
He didn't go. He refused to go and was let go from it was in his training program before he started at that one hospital, the Leeds Hospital. As far as a criminal background with this guy, he was found to have committed a theft in the early part of his nursing career.
What?
Yeah, he helped another colleague steal drugs from the hospital, but was ultimately caught. He was aware of risking the loss of his job because the drug supply in this specific hospital was heavily monitored. He didn't lose his position for this action, though.
That is should be unforgivable in that setting.
I don't understand. I couldn't really find any more information on that, but how do you not lose your job from stealing drugs from a hospital? And you got a charge for it.
Yeah.
At the time of the 4 murders, he worked at Leeds General Infirmary in St. James University Hospital. He had just got his qualification for a nurse about a year earlier, so it would have been 2000. And this was in 2001 when he got the job, so he'd only been a nurse for a year. So right off the bat, people were suspicious of him just being there because he predicted the death of a patient, Ethel Hall. This is a quote from one of the nurses he worked with hours before it happened. He said, "I predict at 5:15 a.m. as being the time Ethel Hall will become unwell." And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And okay, here's the thing too.
Suspiciously worded.
Now, I did read something saying that a lot of nurses are able to predict that, actually. They can roughly estimate. But to say that out of the blue when this lady...
Yeah, and to say an exact time, that's kind of...
A little weird.
Maybe it's not, but I think it is.
Yeah, definitely. You know, he said this without there being any medical indication of an impending illness. So, essentially, she was fine. She was in there for a broken hip, but nothing else, really. Oddly enough, Ethel Hall, her condition worsened badly by that morning around 5 a.m. And then she died some weeks later.
Oh.
After Hall had become unwell, nurses, including Norris, came to tend her. Norris tapped his watch and said to the nurse that he had predicted the illness to her earlier, and he said, "I told you so." So, this guy was a little screw loose already.
Like him.
No, not at all. He complained earlier, before there were any indications she was unwell, that he would have to fill out the paperwork for her death. And these are all, he was saying these things to this other nurse that he worked with. He also stated that same night, "It's always in the morning when things go wrong, and someone always dies when I work nights." So, like, I don't know if that's just casual talk for nurses, but I have a feeling it's not. When the police came to question about that and the 3 other patients who died unexpectedly, he said they seem to have been unlucky over the last 12 months. So
he said that?
Yes, he said that to police that were investigating.
That the patients were unlucky, or that he was unlucky?
That the patients were unlucky, because there were 4 murders in total. So when they were investigating all of this, that was his response. That is such a sinister thing to say.
I'm not trying to be stupid, but what do you interpret that meaning to be?
Me?
Yeah. Like to say, oh, well, they've had a rough couple of months. Because to me, I'm like, well, they're probably old, right? And they're in the hospital, so yeah, you know.
Yeah, I mean...
Is it kind of cold, maybe?
I think that's why. I think it's just like I mean, I get it. You work somewhere where, like...
Unless I'm missing something. Am I missing something?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's just these patients had died unexpectedly, and he was primarily took care of them with a couple of nurses, so they had to question him, obviously.
But the whole thing with, like, I'm assuming this guy, I don't know in your research if you came across the term angel of death.
Yeah, angel of death.
I'm assuming that he's considered that.
That's I did see things. There were a couple like headline posts, like BBC and stuff, that were like calling him that, but.
Because a big thing with the angels of death, quote unquote, which I don't really like that term.
I don't like that either.
Is that their victims are always in the hospital, so it's less suspicious than a fully healthy person.
Yes.
Ending up dead.
Yeah, and especially in this guy's case because they were all 80 years plus. Well, there was a lady that was 79, but we'll get into the other 3 murders. I just wanted to bring up that one about the Ethel Hall lady. She was actually the only one that didn't die from him.
Mm-hmm. Did you go over how he killed her? Or?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We'll get into that.
Okay.
But I can right now. So essentially, with how that was happening, how he was killing these women, he was giving them incredibly high amounts of insulin. And insulin works all on like your C-peptide receptors and stuff like that. That's like highly correlated with your brain. So yeah, he was giving them like lethal doses of insulin. Now there was a guy about 10 years before him that killed like 250 people in England doing this. And that guy worked with insulin patients. Harold Shipman. That was the guy. He killed over 250 people with lethal insulin injections. So while he worked at, Leeds General Infirmary in St. James Hospital, over like a 12-month period, there were 4 women that passed away from going into hyperglycemia, comas, and then dying. So their brains were just like shutting down on them, and they started realizing that insulin was on their their medical charts and stuff. They weren't even diabetic. I thought this was weird too. I don't think there was any kind of like weird connection with it, but they had broken hips. So they all came in with broken hips. And they said this in here too. They were like, he was administering high dose of morphine to disorient them. And I was like, I don't think that was really like, I mean, he did that because they had broken hips. I felt like they were trying to say it like, oh, he did it to like, so they didn't realize that he was giving them insulin. It was like, how would you know?
A little bit.
Right, and I'm sure it did play a part because, if you're on morphine or something, it'll probably knock you out.
And I just want to say, too, kind of as a secondary thought to what I said earlier about how these angels of death are more difficult to catch because of the victim pool. And at the same time, people in the medical field, I do this a lot, too, where you tend to just kind of, like, blindly trust people in the medical field. That they're, like, know what they're doing, which, to a certain extent, is good to do. You don't want to be, like, paranoid all the time, but... Yeah. That just adds another element to it that I think makes these cases difficult, that there's probably a lot more of these cases that...
Exactly, that haven't been figured out.
Which is terrifying to think about.
And I think that's a good point, because with this guy, one, just 10 years ago, the same thing had been done.
I'm sorry, 10 years from when the
2000,
story took...
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because this was 2001. So obviously this guy, it was easier for him to get caught, I feel, because it's like, this just happened, but who knows, like, other stuff out there that medical professionals know. In this hypoglycemic death that these 4 women had, there is a guy that is like one of the like most knowledgeable people in the world on insulin. Like, he dedicated his whole life to it. I think like he ended up having diabetes or something from what I read. He was saying that they did group studies, because this is a problem that happens like very rarely. Your body like overloads on insulin by itself. Now, it can happen because of like failing organs or like broken bones.
Oh.
So that was the thing with the hip.
Oh,
that the body like started overproducing that insulin. But
so, and stop me if this is getting too far ahead, but is that, do you think, why he chose the women with the broken bones? Because it would be less of a red flag?
Oh my gosh, yeah. But like I said too, that guy I was talking about that's like insulin expert, you know, he knows all this stuff. He said in like test studies where they had like 2,000 to 3,000 people that this like hypoglycemic coma thing that happened, it was like less than 5% of people. Mm-hmm. And this was over like a 24-month study or something. So really, it's not that common when you have a couple thousand people. But this all happened in the span of 12 months. That hypoglycemic coma thing, not very common. Happened in a really short span of time while they were at this hospital. So they started investigating, like, let's look into this, because people at the hospital were suspicious of him for the comments. In that year, though, 72 people died while he was working. So they started investigating, like, the ward that he was working in.
You mean 72 people under his direct care?
No, just people that he had, like, was like the nurse in the room, you know.
Okay.
So no, not under his direct care. So when they took a blood sample from Ethel Hall, that first lady that had that but got lucky and didn't die, right? They did it posthumously after a doctor had concerns and wanted blood tests from her, since she was under his care at one point. Her blood found inexplicably massive amount of insulin, 1,000 units in just one sample. I don't know what a normal dose of insulin is, but I guarantee it's nowhere near 1,000.
I feel like it's way less.
So that was like the main evidence for like their investigation. They were like, okay, like this is definitely like... And actually the doctor who ordered that test, this was the guy that was like the diabetes expert. Oh. So yeah. Ethel Hall was the first person that they started putting stuff together, but there had been incidents before this. The first incident that happened with this was in May of 2000. He had apparently ejected Vera Wilby, who was at the hospital due to a broken hip. You know, gave her morphine and stuff like that to make her drowsy. Colin Norris was the nurse that was taking care of her. So he gave her a high dose of morphine to make her drowsy before administering the insulin and going off shift. 90 minutes later, she was found to be semi-conscious and suffering from a sudden and inexplicable hypoglycemic attack, but she survived. June, just the month after that, another patient was admitted there under Norris's care with a broken hip. Doris Ludlam, on the 25th of June, so about a week and a half after she had arrived at Leeds Hospital, she was also given, you know, a high dose of painkillers, followed by insulin to reduce her blood sugar. And just like last time, Colin Norris left his shift. They found her in a coma. This is Ludlam. 40 minutes later, she had died. Yeah, she died from the hyperglycemic coma she was in. The next one after that, there was another woman, Bridget Bork, who had been admitted to the hospital on the 16th of June, also with broken hip. Strange. She was then discovered at 3 in the morning on the 21st of July, suffering from an inexplicable hypoglycemic attack. She died the next day. On the 10th of October, this is all in the same year, of course, Irene Crooks was also admitted to the ward with a broken hip. A colleague later stated Colin Norris showed no desire to help Irene Crooks out after she fell into a coma. Another colleague also later claimed that Norris had watched in detached amusement after one of the victims had fallen into a coma. So he was like deriving pleasure 100%. So along with Ethel Hall, none of these women were diabetic. To like be smart enough to like go through medical school. Yeah. It was discovered after Ethel Hall's death that insulin had been taken from the storage fridge, and Colin Norris later admitted that
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Ethel Hall's death not related.
Not related, correct, okay. Yes. Ethel Hall put together like she given insulin by Colin Norris, and they're like, oh crap, like something's going on here. He actually admitted that he was the last person to have access to the fridge before Ethel Hall was injected with insulin. So he told on himself, essentially. 2 vials of insulin were found to be taken from the fridge, which Colin Norris ended up admitting that he did take it.
Yeah, what'd you do with it, Colin?
They were also worried because, like I said, when the police did that investigation and found that he had theft from stealing drugs from before, they're like, okay, like now we have more to build off of here. He also admitted that he was the last person to see Ethel Hall at 4:30 in the morning, half an hour before she fell into the coma around 5. And he also did say to her, or to the colleagues, oh, she's going to be sick at about 5:15. How?
It's almost like he wanted to get caught.
I know,
You know?
like he did not.
I hate to say this, but it's like he almost could have gotten away with it feels like, if he wouldn't have done all these things. Even the diabetes thing, like, yeah, that's suspicious, but if that was the only thing, who's to say that it would be enough to conduct an investigation?
Right. So, at this point, like, obviously the police are heavily involved. They have him in questioning and questioned him about Ethel Hall. He responded by saying, he said, well, obviously if someone was to kill someone, they wouldn't leave their signature, would they, to say that they were there? He said this to police. Like you just said, it's almost like he wants to get caught.
Yeah.
Like, wow, to say that to police are just like the biggest red flag. They, were very dismissive of any denials he had towards, like, oh, like, I didn't do it. Like, it wasn't me. It's like,
sure, it looks like I did, but I didn't do it.
It wasn't me. Colin Norris also was telling the police that someone had came into the ward that he was working on and gone into a bay to inject a lady before sneaking out with anybody realizing it.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah, his alibi, essentially, or like his, like, well, I didn't do it. This is probably what happened. He said that just a random person snuck into the ward that he was working on, went into the med bay and injected the lady before being seen and sneaking out. He said this to the police.
All right.
Like,
interesting suggestion.
They were probably like, thanks, sir. It clearly wasn't you.
Case closed.
Wrap it up, guys. Dinner's on me. And investigators said that Colin Norris didn't really seem to be explicitly denying the murders, but insisting that they could not be proved. And that's totally what he's doing. He's like, I'm not saying I did it, but can you prove it?
Yeah.
Like, that's maddening.
Which is like, I mean, I don't know. He's kind of right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what a lawyer's job is, to make ridiculous arguments like that. And kind of put that doubt in your mind. Not all lawyers' jobs, obviously.
Right. And the police also stated that he had acted particularly bizarre during the interview, obviously. He at one point even had to be restrained for trying to get physically aggressive with the detectives.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna
really
work in your favor, bud.
He later admitted that he was doing all of that, like, show and tell during the investigation to prove that he knew much more than police.
So?
It's like, even if you
Why
did...
do you want to prove that? Yeah.
After, like, further research and stuff, or further evidence from that the police gathered, they discovered that Colin Norris was mistreating other elderly patients in the past.
No.
I know, right?
Not this guy.
No, not Colin.
What?
Colin's a good dude.
That's so out of character.
Really, come on, Colin.
Someone must be lying.
Someone's gotta be. In one instance, there was an elderly man that asked Colin Norris to empty his catheter bag.
Which
is like...
Ew.
Yeah. Like, that
Just gonna say, I could never be a nurse. So...
Right.
I would probably react the same way to however Mr. Norris is going to react.
Except for killing him.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming he's not going to kill this man.
Well, yeah.
He's probably going to throw a tantrum.
Right.
Which is what I would do.
And which he did. He refused, insisted that the man did it in the bathroom himself before leaving. The elderly man then collapsed after trying to reach the bathroom himself. Other patients said things that he treated them in an offhand and callous manner.
I have a question. Did he treat not elderly patients nice, or was he just kind of like a jerk to everyone?
From what I looked, no. Just towards these elderly patients, like even his coworkers and stuff. No one had ever said things about him until he was saying, like, oh, hey, she's gonna be sick.
Yeah, but
like,
no one seemed to notice, like, him behaving like weirdly around, I don't want to say like normal aged people, but you know what
younger,
I mean. Yeah.
younger,
not elderly people, not elderly and not child people.
Truthfully, no, I didn't see anything. That had mentioned that, but I also didn't see anything in here mentioning that he did. So I'm gonna guess that he was fine.
It was
probably
just kind of like normal.
Yeah, just when it came to the geriatric, he
wasn't noticeably like nasty or
Yeah.
kind. Just
He was verbally abusive. They'd ring the emergency buzzer, climbing out of beds and stuff like that. He wasn't helping them get back in. And
also, I do want to say before sorry to cut you off, but elder abuse is a real thing.
Yes.
And I know that that's not, like, really what this is about, but I just want to, like, throw that in there that it is something worth doing independent research on because it is a serious issue.
Yeah. Sorry, just this last quote that the police had got from people. After a patient fell out of bed, and when they asked for help, he was recorded saying, "I hope you suffer and rot in hell."
Oh my gosh, that's what this guy, Colin said?
Yes. I'm just really trying to, like,
What did he say?
I hope you suffer and rot in hell because someone fell out of their bed and they asked for help.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I'm just, and I was reading these last ones to just truly, like, explain this guy's, like,
that's shocking
distaste
to hear, yeah.
for,
And it's
the
like,
elderly.
why? This is the profession that you chose. Like, go back to being a travel agent.
Yeah.
Why would you, like...
Why are you going to do something you don't want to do?
I'm sure maybe you get paid a little bit more than a travel agent, but if you're that
Probably.
miserable and...
Just leave.
Yeah.
No one says you got to do it.
Yeah.
After all this, though, they had enough evidence to arrest him, have a trial. It took 19 weeks for the trial. It took the jury 4 days to deliberate. He was convicted by an 11-1 majority verdict on the 3rd of March 2008 of the murder of 4 women and the attempted murder of a 5th aged 90.
Wow, 2008?
Yeah. So, yeah,
Wow.
it took them a while to get him into court, and actually put him on
Yeah.
trial for this, because this is now 7 to 8 years after.
So they got him in 2001?
Yeah, 2001.
Okay.
It was like late 2001, going into 2002.
Gotcha.
He was sentenced to life imprisonment. Thank God. Yeah, very deserved. Well earned, Colin.
Well earned.
He was ordered to serve a minimum term of 30 years in prison the following day. He already had 30 years minimum and then got life imprisonment on top of that. They said that he was acting very aggressive throughout the trial, banging on the windows of the judge and attacking members of the press when leaving the court. So he's, like, completely just
What? How have I never heard of this guy?
I know. When I was reading this, I was like, this dude is a lunatic. But I don't know if he's because he's from a different country or what it is. I don't know. Yeah, so he was attacking people, yelling at the judge. The judge rejected any possibility that he was practicing euthanasia. That was, like, his defense statement or whatever. Yeah, like...
Yeah, I hope you go to hell and die. What?
But that was obviously denied because none of these people were terminally ill.
Yeah.
The judge, I just wanted to read this quote because I think it's really awesome that the judge said this to him, and hopefully it, like...
I love when judges snap back.
And they do, and they say some, like, powerful stuff. He said, "You are, I have absolutely no doubt, a thoroughly evil and dangerous man. You are an arrogant and manipulative man with a real dislike of elderly patients. The most telling evidence was that observation of one of your patients, Bridget Tarpey, who said, 'He did not like us old women.'" Awful guy.
Yeah.
The British press started... Now, this wasn't Scotland, but it was pretty getting popularized over there. Started calling him the Angel of Death, which we said earlier. I think it's just a dumb term.
For anybody that doesn't know, it's kind of an umbrella term for doctors or medical professionals who kill their patients.
Yeah. And, just to pay respects to these people, it was Doris Ludlam. She died 27th of June, 2002. Bridget Bork died July 22nd, same year. Irene Crooks, October 20th, same year. And Ethel Hall, oddly enough, was the last one to end up dying. He got attempted murder for her, but she did pass away, so...
When did she pass away?
The 11th of November.
Of 2002?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ethel Hall's son, Stuart Hall, was actually at the trial, and he said, "I think he needs to be kept inside. After all the pain and suffering he instilled on these people, especially in my mother, there should be no peace for this man." So
I agree.
Ethel Hall's son actually got to go up there and speak, which I thought was really interesting.
I love that.
Yeah. He had a failed appeal, appealed against his conviction in 2009. He lost the appeal, of course.
No.
When the judge ruled that the convictions were safe and saying that the case against Norris is very strong indeed. The court rejected the grounds of the appeal. It didn't happen. They said it couldn't be validly be criticized in any way to be right. And there was no misdirection of the jury. The judge's summary of the case was an exemplary tour de force. I thought that was funny.
So they did a good job.
But after all this happened, he's in jail. He's been sentenced. People started coming out, and they think that he's innocent. There is a huge following of Colin Norris, of people that think that he is innocent. They are like thoroughly convinced that this guy's innocent.
Why?
Well, I'd be happy to tell you, because I said the same thing when I...
Maybe I'll get convinced. Maybe he is innocent.
I'm not gonna... I'll just, let me read. I won't even say nothing.
All right. I'm open to him being innocent.
Cool, because...
I'm open to hearing the argument.
It's pretty interesting. On October 4th, 2011... new concerns were raised about the safety of Norris's conviction. Professor Vincent Marks, the leading expert on insulin poisoning, that was the guy's name, Vincent Marks.
Okay, the same guy.
Yeah, that was
the same guy from earlier.
Yeah. He said the jury at Norris's trial was led to believe by experts that a cluster of hypoglycemic episodes among people who are not diabetic was sinister, but not uncommon. I don't know, that was worded
weird. Can you explain that again?
Like, I don't know why it's
terms
worded.
my brain can understand.
Like he was saying, like, what he did was sinister, but that's also not uncommon for these people.
Okay.
He said, yes, what he did was wrong if he did, but it wasn't uncommon because this actually does happen to people with broken bones and failing.
Okay, because I was going to ask you earlier if, when you said that people with broken bones, they have higher amounts of insulin or whatever, I was wondering if that was specific to people that have diabetes or don't have diabetes or whatever. And that's interesting that he said that, because he was kind of rallying against him.
Yeah.
And then he says this statement that almost
completely
is like in his favor.
Weird.
That's strange.
A little bit.
I don't know what to think about that.
Yeah. He also was quoted saying, looking at all the evidence, all I can say is I think Colin Norris's conviction is unsafe.
What does that mean, unsafe? Like it's not
like the
right?
Yeah. Like he's saying, like, the conviction wasn't appropriately done.
I've never heard that before, that saying that.
Conviction is unsafe.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like...
Unsafe for who?
For him. Like, it was unsafe to, like, pretty much saying, like, wrongly accused. So this guy, Professor Vincent Marks, said that the 4 patients picked out by the experts after Mrs. Hall's death, which were the Ludlam, Crooks, and Bridget Bork. He said that they were all at very high risk of developing spontaneous hypoglycemia because they had risk factors such as malnutrition, infection from the broken bones, and multi-organ failure.
They all had histories of that?
Yes. But they weren't diabetic. They were coming in...
But they had a documented history of high... whatever that was? High insulin or hypoglycemia, whatever.
No. They're at risk for developing spontaneous hypoglycemia.
Okay, which is
because
what they
thought. They had the risk factors. They were malnourished, broken hip, organ problems. So they were all at risk, actually, for developing this.
Maybe he's just really unlucky.
He truly could be. I mean, I'd like to think not, because it's still just... It's like, yeah, okay, that is possible.
Yeah.
But also, I was saying this earlier, when people have hypoglycemic attacks from insulin that's produced naturally in your body, those C peptides are produced, which are detected in blood tests, and the analysis of tests on all of those women that were murdered by him, because they were, did not show any presence of C peptides. So stating that insulin had to be introduced to their bodies externally, so it had to come from something.
Debunked.
Right.
Insulin expert.
But also, too, I'm just saying, it's weird. It's very strange to me how that Vincent Marks guy, was saying, like, oh, this wasn't possible, but then at the same time saying, like, oh, well, it could be. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was really weird. I wanted to read what, he had quoted and stuff, because it's like, I don't know if he's on it, because he's an expert on it, he's trying to be like, okay, well, like, it is possible, but it's also not possible, because, I don't know. Weird. So even after, like, now there's kind of, like, this, like, following of people that, like, are doing research, they think he's innocent. In January of 2015, the foreman of the jury that convicted Norris told the BBC that he now believes him to be innocent. Apparently, the second member of the jury feels the same way. February 2021, the CCRC referred to the case to the Court of Appeal, saying there was a serious possibility that the conviction was unsafe.
But there were no C-peptides. How do you explain that?
I don't know. The thing that gets me about this is, like, it sounds like you were, like, horribly rotten to all these elderly patients. Told people to rot in hell. You predicted when the lady was going to be sick after you clearly...
Yeah.
But... there's also the part of me that wants to be like open-minded, because I mean, after doing this research, like, how do I feel? I mean, if it came down to it, like, if I was sitting on like a jury against this guy, I would be like, yeah.
There's like so much evidence to suggest that he is guilty, like way more. It doesn't even compare to the question of, oh, maybe he didn't do it. It's like, it doesn't even compare.
No.
I just think also, like, the victims in this case were all elderly. It's easy to kind of, like, as harsh as it sounds, it's easy to kind of be like, oh, well, they were at the end of their lives anyway. Like, it's almost as if their murders maybe don't matter. Like, that's how it can feel.
Oh.
I'm not saying that's what I think.
Yeah.
But I think that people do need to be kind of reminded that these people, like, murder is murder, no matter what. But what I think I'm trying to get at is maybe since the victims were elderly and not, say, children, it's easier to believe that maybe he might be innocent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense.
I mean,
I'm not trying to defend him.
I understand. I'm eager to see what happens here in the years to come with that, because in February 2021, the CCRC referred to the case to the Court of Appeal, saying there was a serious possibility that the conviction was unsafe. You know, that was just in February. So I don't know. I'm eager to see what happens. I hope he stays away, because I mean, just looking at it, like, from my point of view, I think the C peptides, that's like the biggest thing.
That's what I keep coming back to.
Like,
he can't be innocent if the C peptides are there or
right,
aren't there.
They aren't there because they said that's when the body's naturally producing it.
Yeah.
You don't get that from an external injection of insulin.
Yeah, that's like.
And he was stealing it.
Yeah.
He took 2 bottles. It's just like, how is there
and
any?
He's just like not a good guy. I don't know.
No, and he wasn't at all.
He's not nice. I wish there was more information about his childhood, though.
You know what? And I looked. Spent about like 2 hours. I had some downtime when I was at work. I could not find any kind of Wikipedia information or anything like.
Because you got to think it has to have something to do with his grandma.
That's what I'm saying too. But he even said, and
maybe he even like. I hate to speculate stuff like this, but maybe his grandmother was like abusive to him in some way. Because you know how sometimes, especially young people who are like abused by family members, it's like a love-hate kind of thing. So I wonder if, almost like Ed Gein.
I mean, I don't know, and maybe it could even be something like trauma with an elderly person that maybe wasn't a family member and like he never talked about it or something. I don't know. There's a lot of things that it could be. Regardless, I think that this guy should stay locked up. He clearly killed these women. That's about it.
I mean, I am like a paranoid person in general, so I'm always, no matter what, if I have any sort of like, Gabe can attest to this, I'm a massive hypochondriac, and I'm convinced whenever I'm sick or something is like hurting that this is like the end of the world, and I'm the only person that's ever like going through this. And the idea that this has happened before, where this once in a lifetime kind of thing has happened to these people that you're supposed to trust, is like fuel to that paranoia fire. So it's very scary.
That is a really terrifying thing when you think about it. Yeah. You wouldn't be none the wiser.
Yeah.
You're just laying there. And thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to let Liv wrap it up here with any closing messages.
All right. Great story from Gabe. You can check out our Instagram at Clandestine Pod, spelled just like you see in the title here. We also have a Facebook page that you can like, and it's facebook.com/clandestinepod. Go check those out for updates on when we're going live. I hope everyone has a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow or next time. Bye.